So you might be wondering what proto-UFO is. I guess you probably do know what cosmic consciousness is, but if you don't, I'll be covering that later in the second half of the talk about consciousness. And Stranger Things, well, this is not about the TV series, this is the Stranger Things apart as far as different views of ufology. To corrupt a quotation of Shakespeare, there are stranger things in heaven and earth ratio than I've dreamt of in your philosophy. So for me, you'll find stranger things in this talk than you'll see the commonly held beliefs in ufology. So I've been interested in the subject since childhood. So bear with me a second, I'm going to time this because I've only practiced it a few times, so I don't want to miss out the really interesting stuff at the end. So yeah, and one of the frustrations, the reason I went down the path I did was because I became frustrated with ufology and the subject and the dogma attached to it, and its narrow-mindedness, and eventually I ended up rather than just looking at UFO report data as being the primary source of information about trying to understand the phenomena, I decided to stick to my guns and what I know and look at the scientific data. And it turns out there have been some scientific studies of UFOs, studying UFOs directly in the field rather than just studying UFO reports, which is a very different methodology. And you get a very different outcome from that kind of study. So we changed the scientific framework. This change was, as far as I'm concerned, ufology is a scientific discipline. It kind of depends on the people who are doing it, what skill level is. You've got scientists such as Jacques Vallée, James McDonald, and Jane Hynek. And so when they were practicing ufology, that was scientific ufology. When you have someone, for example, of Nick Pope, for example, or Gary Heseltine, a police officer and a Minister of Defence, a desk jockey from Geekheads and Nick Pope. They are dealing with a very different thing to what a scientist would do, and this is explained succinctly by Jacques Vallée in his book Messages of Deception. Now, in the context of Vallée had been speaking to a US military intelligence guy who gives him the name of Major Murphy in his book Messages of Deception. So it says, now, the UFO phenomena could be controlled by alien beings. And if it is, he added the Major, then the study of it does not belong in science, it belongs in intelligence, meaning counter-espionage. And he pointed out that was his domain. In the field of counter-espionage, the rules are completely different. You're a scientist, and in science there is no concept of price of information. Suppose I gave you 95% of the data concerning the phenomena. You are happy because you know 95% of the phenomena. Not so in intelligence. If I get 95% of the data, I know this is the cheap part of the information, and I still need to know the other 5%, but I will have to pay a high price to get it. You see, Hitler had 95% of the information about the landing at Normandy, but he had the wrong 95%. So the expectation is that there's an intelligence behind the UFO phenomenon, be it extraterrestrial intelligence or otherwise. This renders the interpretation of the collected data outside of the scope of science. The reason being because science does not deal with intelligence. On the other hand, the advantage of the scientific method is that it's naive and assuming, and its basic assumption is that it's dealing with natural phenomena. And this removes the notion of intelligence from explanations of. It removes what Vallée's acquaintance referred to as the price of the information. Of course, its conclusions will be rendered devoid of intelligent cause, whether the phenomena is intelligently derived or not. But at least the physical nature of the phenomena that can be investigated without the unprovable concept of intelligence getting in the way. So ufology, then, it's a controversial subject, and I'm sure you're all well aware of that. And this is fraught with controversy, and I'm sure we'll have no shortage of that tonight. So among the pros and characteristics I want to share with you tonight is regarding the physical nature of the phenomena. So after looking at the physical nature of the UFO phenomena, I'll then lead on to looking at consciousness and the effect, the interactions between the UFO experience and the consciousness interactions that come out of the data. So without further ado, let's begin by reminding ourselves about the phenomena and with a few examples that broaden the connections between UFOs and other unusual phenomena. It was 4:45 a.m. on the 1st of April of 1966 when Charles Hood first saw the thing. Charles was described by local journalist Arthur Shuttlewood in his book The Warminster Mystery as a typical stolid Wiltshireman, and he was in the presence of three other people in Warminster Central Car Park. What they saw from the car park was a silvery cigar-shaped object sail over the downs and move towards Cop Heap, which is a small hill reputed to be the ancient burial place of Saxton chieftain. But before the object reached Cop Heap, however, the object changed. The cigar shape became elongated into what Charles described as a long poker of white hot fire. It also underwent a colour change, where, as he describes, it changed from a crimson glow flooded its entire length. The thing changed once again, and in this case it burst, splitting into two halves, and no sound was heard about Charles, but from this apparent explosion. And mysteriously, at the point of breakage, this unusual aerial phenomena gave birth to 6 red light forms that spiralled momentarily downwards, and after they did so, they changed colour from red to silver before they reportedly moved off raced off into the distance, north of Cop Heap. So such an object experienced in a contemporary British town would obviously these days be considered as a UFO. Back in 1966, the people of Warminster had been exposed to the UFO hysteria from the other side of the Atlantic, and so the journalists and the local people really considered this a Warminster phenomenon and referred to it as the Warminster thing, or simply the thing. So there's more sightings continued, and on the 4th of April, the thing was at it again. This time it was observed by a senior official of the Bank of England who saw it while driving towards Warminster, and this time he saw what he described as a cigar-shaped object again, this time gliding over a village and leaving a trail of 6 orange balls of light that followed it. And these orange lights floated like as if autumn leaves floating. And followed the object, disappeared off into the south. And these 6 tiny orange balls of light, however, also underwent a colour change, changing from orange to silver white. And as they did so, they often sped off in different directions, with 3 of them heading towards Cradle Hill on the outskirts of the town. A further 3 days later, there was yet more witnesses to the Warminster thing. 2 lieutenants from the 1st Battalion of the Welsh Regiment, which is in Warminster, witnessed the aerial phenomenon that they described as a disc somewhat like a spinning top. And they watched it for about 10 to 15 seconds as it traversed the sky, again from east to west towards Cradle Hill. Warminster was undergoing what we call a UFO flap, a spike in reported activity in a specific geographical location in a short period of time. Now, this mysterious light phenomenon, whatever was behind it, was witnessed by several hundred people would be witnessed by several hundred people in the coming months, including the journalist Arthur Shuttleworth himself. And the exact nature of the phenomenon is uncertain, but this time, of course, speculation abounded. And in fact, in the preceding years, a number of other unusual phenomena had been reported in the region that we would not even now classify as UFOs. On several occasions in the years prior to this, and in this flap of 66, a number of witnesses in the region were thrust into unusual, unexplained auditory experiences rather than visual ones. In one case, a woman was rendered frozen by an oppressive sound emanating from the sky that forced her to the ground. And another, a man heard a similar sound that he described as the Blitz. And there were numerous military personnel at Nuke Camp in Hightsbury near Warminster who heard on Christmas Day of 1964 a sound that they described as something as if a huge chimney stack in the main block had been ripped off from the rooftop and scattered in solid chunks across the compound. The troops, however, when they went outside to investigate, saw nothing unusual. So this chronological pattern of unexplained sounds preceding an apparent kinetic paranormal manifestation is also reminiscent of another unexplained phenomenon, that of poltergeist activity. The area reflected in this case of the Warminster thing is much larger than the usual small, locale, perhaps a building size, focal point of the commonly associated with poltergeist activity. And while a person is often the focal point of the activity, according to the renowned researcher and author Colin Wilson, the onset of poltergeist activity is marked by the experience of scratching sounds, which are often found to precede any visual or kinetic or indeed parapsychological or psychological manifestation. And there's another commonality that can be found that hasn't escaped my attention with this. As already mentioned, the UFO activity is often associated with geographical locations. It's particularly interesting to note that both UFO poltergeist activity have been shown to correlate with geological features such as hills as well as ley lines and known archaeological sites. Now, you may feel this is a stretch too far to link UFO phenomena with paranormal activity. However, you may also remember in the movie Close Encounters, this poltergeist-like activity was depicted in the movie, where you have this child's toys moving around by themselves, and this was depicted as happening as essentially at the beginning of the onset of light phenomena, and it also preempted later alien contact, or later entity contact. So this correlation with the Warminster thing and poltergeist activity does not end there. Shuttlewood describes another case from his files of mysterious oral phenomena, where a family reported that they had an unnerving time from when slumber was broken by the rude trumpeting of a will-o'-the-wisp, culprit ravaging the rooftop. And according to the husband, it made a sound as if tons of coal were being emptied from sacks and sent tumbling all over the place. Now, Shuttlewood indicates that the sounds were accompanied by light phenomena of the unidentified variety, and he added also that in the aftermath of the experience, the bedroom was left bitterly cold and as the calm descended on the house. Now, this drop in temperature, as I'm sure you're all aware, is also indicative of other paranormal phenomena, including poltergeist phenomena. And the husband also elicits us with some other additional information about the physical aspect of this when he described it as when he said it all began with an electrical crackling. So we're free to assume that sightings of unusual aerial phenomena such as these are just light phenomena, as in not physical. However, you'll see shortly there's ample evidence demonstrating these are real physical manifestations. However, human experiences with light forms are not always considered unidentified, and certain kinds are assumed to be etheric in nature, for example. In his book, Fairies at Work and Play, Geoffrey Hodgson, who was a clairvoyant, describes, of his many experiences, he describes experiences with etheric fairies as fleeting light forms that he experienced in the Lake District in England, in this case in November of 1921. The first glimpse I get is that of swiftly moving forms on the surface of the mountain and in the air. Sometimes it is possible to follow a single form for long distance, and at other times the attention is attracted to a vivid flash and with a sense of movement in a definitive direction only. The etheric forms described by Hodgson in his work can be assumed to be confined to his second sight, his clairvoyance. Yet do we know that this is so? Could there be a physical aspect of these fairy tales, a residual physical signature that complements his clairvoyant experience? A particular type of fairy known in tradition as a puck or a poke is also seen as a light form, and it can easily be compatible with what we know as the orange ball of light phenomenon, as the UFO phenomena. And a curious study of them can be found in a 1846 study of geology, strangely enough. The document entitled Observations on Certain Indentations in the Old Red Sandstone of Worcestershire and Herefordshire, and this document is rich in accounts of fairies. However, its author, being a student of geology and a council member of the region's Natural History Society, is quick to accept them as just simply natural phenomena. However, he wrote, about 18 years ago, in a boggy spot at Privney Meadow, he was within about 3 or 4 yards of a jack-o'-lantern and thought he smelt something like sulphur, but it immediately afterwards flitted away and he saw no more of it. Now, if you've read The Mothman Prophecies by John Keel, you may remember there was a case where there was a flying saucer landing associated with the smell of sulphur. So the smell of sulphur is also found in other paranormal phenomena, as I'm sure you're well aware again. So, however, back to the geology paper. So in describing this light, some of the witnesses in this old report basically describe it as not like this, that the light of them is just as an appearance about as strong as the light from a horn lantern, such as are used in stables and by country people, that sometimes they appear to the beholder and then in the twinkle of an eye at a considerable distance, that other times they stay for some time near one place and flit up and down and also move horizontally, like as if a person was moving about looking for something. Fascinating, these sightings of orange balls of light are similar to those of contemporary UFOs, and for me, the following account resonates strikingly with my own personal experience of watching UFOs in Todmorden Moor in West Yorkshire. So this account, again from this geology book, a natural history book, describes this. A gentleman and a lady residing in old storage also informed me that in the autumn of the year 1815, as they were walking from the house called Stocks to Tunbridge, both in Suckley, they saw at about 9 o'clock at night a will-o'-the-wisp in an adjoining meadow, down in the flat near the brook, belonging to the Stocks estate. That it was sometimes about 150 and some other times about 50 yards from them, and they looked at it for about 4 or 5 minutes, that it moved in a gliding way up and down and made a kind of arc in its progress from place to place, that it appeared sometimes to have a quivering motion as if agitated by a breeze, that its light was like that from a horn lantern and about as strong. Now, these descriptions are the closest I've come across in any literature about to the UFO sightings I've had in Todmorden Moor, and my initial introduction to Tob and Damar as a location was by some friends who were engaging in CE5 sessions. So we'd gone there with the intention to contact UFOs, and these are some of the objects we saw. And I'll mention those again later. The image I've got up here, for example, this is you're probably all aware, this is a photograph taken by police officer Tony Dodd, a well-respected UFO researcher. And these were taken on Carlton Moor near Skipton, which is actually just where I live. So you can see here, actually, I don't know if you can quite see it clearly, but they're actually illuminating the low cloud base there, actually. So for me, these orange balls of light, these are the same phenomena that I believe I've seen in Tob de Moor and occasionally a couple of times actually in Skipton. And to me, these are the same things that I've described to you earlier about the jack-o'-lanterns and the pucks and the pokes, and also known as will o' the wisps, depending on whereabouts in the country you happen to be. And Tony Dodd, who passed away over a decade ago now, had the famous flying saucer sighting near Carlton Moor with 4 other police officers. And while it's well known that he continued to have sightings in the area, what is less well known is that he would continue to have experiences, including mental communications that we now call downloads, with what he claimed to be extraterrestrials. And Dodd claims that he was informed in these communications that these orange balls of light are unoccupied UFO craft that essentially function as monitors of the Earth for the alien beings. Now, I mention this at this point simply to emphasise the fact that Tony Dodd, like many ufologists, did in fact consider these phenomena to be UFOs. I've heard people reject this data outright, simply calling this light phenomena. I'm just emphasising what I've seen and what Dodd saw where I live, and the old fairy lore stuff to me it's the same phenomenon. It's this orange ball of light phenomenon. So before we look any further into mysterious connections with UFOs, let's try and make sense of come to some clearer understanding about UFOs by looking at some UFO reports. You'll be very familiar with the next section, I'm sure, but hopefully I'll find some examples of some detail that maybe you're not aware of.